It was the morning of July 17, 2003, when veteran Yosemite Park Ranger Emily Hart, age 29, prepared for a routine solo patrol through the dense northern ridge of the national park. Emily wasn't just any ranger, she was known for her precision, her deep love for the forest, and her near-telepathic connection with her black Mustang, Shadow. That summer morning was unusually still, with low-hanging fog clinging to the treetops. Emily checked in at the ranger station, geared up with her standard equipment, radio, GPS unit, journal, and flare, then mounted Shadow and rode into the forest. It was supposed to be a standard 8-hour patrol, but she would never return. Her last known contact was at 9:47 a.m. when she radioed in from near trail marker 119, reporting fallen debris blocking a side path. Her tone was calm, professional. There was no indication of stress or urgency. After that, complete silence. At first, no one panicked. Emily often lost signal in the deeper parts of the woods, and her team trusted her capabilities. But by 5 p.m., when she missed her scheduled return, concern turned to unease. Repeated calls to her radio went unanswered. A nearby ranger retraced her expected path but found no signs of her or Shadow. Just quiet trails and thickening fog. By nightfall, a search and rescue team was deployed, equipped with thermal drones and search dogs. The team expected to find a sprained ankle or a broken GPS. What they found was nothing. No fresh tracks, no horse droppings, no prints, no broken branches, not even the usual trail markings Emily always left behind for safety. The only thing they recovered was a single pinnacone placed in the center of the trail, something Emily was known to use as a personal trail marker, but oddly, this one faced the wrong direction, almost as if leading them away. Over the next 48 hours, the search expanded to a 12-mile radius. Helicopters scanned the cliffs. Dogs sniffed through caves and ravines. Volunteers, rangers, and even the military lent support. But nothing. It was as if the forest had swallowed her whole. Her GPS unit stopped transmitting at precisely 10:12 a.m., about 30 minutes after her last radio check-in. The signal was not lost due to battery failure, it was manually turned off. That detail chilled her colleagues. Why would she turn off her GPS in the middle of a patrol? Rumors and theories started to swirl within days. Some believed she'd fallen victim to a wild animal attack, though no blood or signs of struggle were found. Others whispered about a deep crevice she might have fallen into, still hidden from sight, but a few, especially older rangers, suggested something stranger. There are places in these woods, one of them said, that don't want to be found. And sometimes, they take what they want. Officially, Emily Hart was declared missing in the line of duty, but unofficially, those who'd worked with her all agreed on one thing: her disappearance didn't feel natural. By the morning of July 18, 2003, the Yosemite National Park headquarters had launched one of the largest coordinated search efforts in the park's history. Emily Hart wasn't just any ranger, she was family to many on the team. Colleagues, friends, and fellow rangers poured into the northern quadrant of the park, each determined to find even the smallest trace of her. Search dogs were flown in from out of state. 2 Black Hawk helicopters equipped with infrared sensors began sweeping the tree canopy and mountain ridges. Over 100 volunteers from nearby towns showed up, many of whom had hiked those very trails with Emily over the years. The atmosphere was tense, hopeful, and deeply unsettling, especially as hour after hour passed with nothing. The first thing the search team noticed was how eerily undisturbed the forest was. There were no signs of a struggle, no dropped supplies, no broken branches indicating a fall or a scuffle. Even the dogs had trouble catching a scent beyond a half-mile past the last radio contact point. It was as if all evidence of her presence had simply evaporated. The trail camera set up near marker 120, one of the few high-definition cams in that sector, showed Emily riding past at 9:40 a.m. That was it, frame by frame. She and Shadow disappeared down the path, and then nothing. The following frames show only trees swaying gently. No one came after her. Nothing followed, but she never came back. After 72 hours, specialized cave rescue teams were brought in to explore the deep cracks and crevices scattered across the granite landscape. The northern ridge was home to narrow chasms and forgotten mine shafts from the 1800s, any of which could have become a tomb. They dropped cameras and lights into the darkness, but found no signs of Emily, Shadow, or even disturbed rock. Not a boot print, not a rope snag, not a scratch on the stone walls. Drones that flew deeper into the terrain began malfunctioning, strangely, losing signal for seconds at a time in mid-air before returning to normal just past the tree line. Rangers couldn't explain it, but many felt they were being watched, not by animals, but by something else, as days turned into weeks. Investigators began combing through Emily's personal life for clues. Nothing. She had no known enemies, no mental health concerns, no reason to run. Her journal entries from earlier that month showed a woman at peace, excited for the summer hikes, passionate about preserving nature. Yet still, some on the team couldn't shake the feeling that the forest itself had turned against her. A few older Native American trackers who were brought in refused to step beyond a certain ridgeline. One simply said, "She crossed into the old part. We don't go there." When asked to explain, he simply shook his head and left the camp without another word. Despite the growing eeriness, the official search continued for over 3 weeks, covering nearly 50 square miles. They found nothing, no backpack, no boot, no sign of shadow, not even a broken branch. Eventually, the operation was downgraded from rescue to recovery, though no one said it out loud. Emily Hart was listed as missing, presumed dead. Her photo remained pinned to the whiteboard in the ranger station, her name never erased. But among the search teams, whispers began to spread. It didn't want to be found. What it was, no one could say. But everyone agreed. Something about this disappearance felt deliberately hidden. In the months following the official suspension of the search, the Northern Ridge Trail grew silent, not just in traffic, but in reputation. Hikers avoided it. Rangers reassigned patrol routes that previously crossed Emily's last known location. Locals began calling the stretch of forest the Silent Pass. The name wasn't official, but it caught on quickly. Something about that area felt wrong, and people sensed it, a shift in energy. A hush that settled over the trees like a held breath. Birds were quieter there. Even the wind seemed to avoid it. And soon, the stories began. Campers who wandered too close to the restricted zones began reporting unsettling experiences. Some claimed they'd seen a black horse moving through the trees at night, always just far enough away to avoid clear view, sometimes glimpsed through fog, sometimes by moonlight. A few swore they heard hooves circling their tents, though when they investigated, the ground showed no prints. Others, more shaken, claimed to see a figure in a ranger's uniform, standing motionless between the trees, watching silently. But whenever they tried to approach or shine a flashlight toward it, the figure would vanish. Not run, just gone. Like mist. More than once, hikers found random objects left in the middle of trails, an old compass, a forest map, a broken bootlace, a badge. Each time, park records confirmed they matched the type Emily would have used. But none of the items could be traced directly to her. And when rangers collected the objects, something strange always followed. Radios would go static for hours. GPS devices would lose their signal. And once, a rescue dog refused to enter the woods for days, whining at the tree line. It became a superstition. If you see her gear, don't touch it. Then came the photographs. In 2005, an amateur wildlife photographer posted a grainy image online, showing what looked like a dark silhouette of a rider on horseback, taken near the ridge at dawn. The figure was distant, shrouded in mist, but the posture and uniform resembled Emily's. The post went viral among local forums. A week later, the photographer returned to the same spot. According to his final forum entry, he heard a woman's voice calling faintly through the trees. This way, he described it as soft.com, but not echoing right, as if it wasn't part of the air. He never posted again. As these sightings grew more frequent, so did the fear. Rangers stopped going alone into the upper ridge. New trainees were warned never to enter without backup, and never past dusk. Locals began to believe something ancient had awakened, or had always been there, watching. Emily's disappearance had become more than a missing persons case. It was a warning. And to this day, around quiet campfires and in whispered conversations, hikers still trade stories of the dark horse, the silent woman, and the shadows that move when no one should be there. In the summer of 2007, 4 years after Emily Hart's disappearance, a solo backpacker named Lyle Jennings, age 36, decided to hike the lesser-traveled northern trails of Yosemite, the very trails where Emily had last been seen. Lyle wasn't a thrill-seeker or ghost hunter. He was a seasoned backpacker who prided himself on going where others wouldn't. He'd heard the stories. Of course, the Silent Pass, the Vanishing Ranger, the Wandering Black Horse. But he didn't believe in forest folklore. Myths are just warnings wrapped in fear, He wrote in his travel blog the night before heading out, "And I'm not scared." His last known post would be viewed over 200,000 times. Lyle made camp near ridge marker 117, a few miles from the last location where Emily's GPS had pinged. That first night was uneventful, aside from what he described in his journal as an oppressive quiet. No wind, no animal sounds, no buzzing insects. It felt like the woods were holding their breath, he wrote. But things changed on the second night. Around 2 a.m., Lyle was jolted awake by the sound of hooves, heavy, deliberate, circling his tent, not running, not frantic, just pacing. At first, he thought it might be a wild horse, but as he lay frozen, he realized there was only one set of hoofbeats, and they moved with an unnatural precision, always staying just out of direct view. When Lyle stepped out of his tent, at dawn, expecting to find tracks or broken branches, he instead found something much stranger. Directly in front of his tent, as if carefully placed, was a metal ranger badge, partially rusted, bearing the name, E. Hart. It was real. He recognized it from online case files. It looked like it had been pinned to a tree and torn off. But no one had been there. His food stash was untouched. No signs of animal disturbance, just the badge and a subtle, sharp scent in the air like burnt wood and metal. Though no fire had been lit, Lyle snapped a photo of the badge with his phone. But later, it would be revealed that the file was corrupted, completely unreadable, as if the image had never existed. Later that morning, Lyle tried to hike back toward the ranger station, but he wrote that his compass spun wildly, even when held still. His GPS screen blinked ERROR repeatedly, then powered off completely. He continued downhill using landmarks, growing increasingly disoriented. Around noon, he heard what he described as a woman humming, soft and distant, like it was coming from inside the trees themselves. It was beautiful, he wrote, but, somehow, deeply wrong. Like something pretending to be human. He followed the sound briefly, but stopped when he noticed the trees around him were repeating the same twisted branch, the same fallen log, again and again, as if the forest was folding in on itself. Eventually, Lyle made it back to a ranger outpost, pale, shaking, and dehydrated. He handed them the badge and reported what he'd seen. Rangers verified the badge was authentic, though they had no idea how it could have ended up in such a remote sealed-off section of the forest. Some dismissed his story, chalking it up to exhaustion and hallucination, but others, especially those who had known Emily, didn't. One senior ranger quietly told Lyle, "You're not the first to see her, you know." That night, the badge was locked away. A week later, it was gone from evidence, with no explanation, in October 2008. Over 5 years after Emily Hart's disappearance, a small team of rangers was dispatched to a remote section of Yosemite's Northern Territory to conduct a post-wildfire environmental assessment. A controlled burn the month prior had swept through an unfrequented ravine, clearing out decades' worth of underbrush and revealing areas not seen for years, some, perhaps, never seen at all. The team hiked into a narrow basin bordered by jagged rock walls and a single black pine growing out of a cracked boulder. That's where they saw it. A pile of large sun-bleached bones, partially hidden beneath layers of ash and soot. At first, they assumed it was the remains of a wild horse, perhaps one that had wandered off and perished during the fire. But upon closer inspection, their blood ran cold. The saddle was still intact, charred but unmistakably reissued. Its design matched the exact model issued to Emily in 2003. Still attached to the saddle horn was a canteen. Emily's initials, barely legible beneath the soot. More chillingly, it appeared untouched by flame. Nearby lay a pair of blackened horseshoes, one of them still nailed to a hoof fragment. When forensic teams later examined the remains, DNA confirmed it. The horse was Shadow. But what unnerved the team most wasn't just the remains, it was the placement. The skeleton wasn't lying in disarray like one would expect after a fall or attack. The bones were arranged as if the horse had simply laid down and died, undisturbed. The saddle straps hadn't snapped, and the stirrups weren't twisted. Signs of a struggle were entirely absent. Around the remains were hoofprints, pressed deeply into the soft earth as if made only hours ago, though it hadn't rained in days. Investigators were baffled. How could the tracks be so fresh if the horse had died years ago? One ranger muttered, "It looks like it just got here." The atmosphere at the site was suffocating. Radios crackled with static. Cameras refused to focus. One ranger, a 14-year veteran, reported hearing a soft rhythmic clicking, like hooves pacing behind the rocks, but when he turned, no one was there. The team worked quickly, collecting samples and photographing the site before leaving. But the deeper they went into the ravine, the more they felt it, a sense of being followed, though they never saw anything. One ranger described the air as too still, like everything around us was listening. Another, more shaken, refused to go back at all, later requesting a transfer to a different park entirely. Word of the discovery spread quickly within the ranger community. Though the public statement was sanitized, partial remains of a horse, possibly linked to an open case, have been found. But those who were there knew better. They had found Shadow, but no trace of Emily Hart. No clothing, no backpack, no body. It was as if she had dismounted and vanished into the rocks. Or worse, something had taken her, something that left her horse untouched for 5 years, only to return it after the forest burned. What disturbed them most of all was a simple, terrifying question: why bring the horse back? But not her. A week after Shadow's remains were discovered in the ravine, a small forensics team returned to comb the area more thoroughly. The fire had cleared much of the brush, exposing soil that hadn't seen sunlight in decades. As one investigator examined the base of the large moss-covered boulder where the horse's skull had rested nearby, he noticed a corner of leather barely protruding from under a slab of stone. Carefully pulling it free, he revealed what appeared to be a small, weather-worn field journal, bound in cracked leather and partially scorched around the edges. Despite its condition, the initials EH were still visible, barely etched into the front flap. Inside, most of the pages were water-damaged, smeared with mud, and warped by time and exposure. Ink had bled across the paper, in swirling, unreadable shapes but near the center of the journal. 5 pages remained mostly intact, and what they contained deepened the mystery beyond what anyone was prepared for. The entries were dated from July 17 to July 19, 2003, the 2 days following Emily's disappearance. Her handwriting, while familiar, changed drastically between entries. The first was calm, detailed, noting trail markers, unusual rock formations, and a possible alternate path she'd stumbled upon that didn't match any maps. The next entry was different. Shorter, disjointed. It read, "Lost my bearings. Trees seem, off. Compass spinning. Heard something breathing. Not close, but not far either." The third legible entry was scrawled in shaky pen, as though written while moving or under duress. "Shadow won't go further. Keeps turning around. Won't respond to commands. Something ahead is wrong. I don't see it, but I feel it. Like the ground itself is pushing me back." There was no mention of injury or direct threat, just a growing sense of unease. On the 4th page, things took a darker turn. The words were erratic, looping, some of them scratched so deeply into the paper that the tip of the pen had torn through. One chilling line stood out among the chaos. "I hear it breathing behind me. It's not a bear, it's not a man, and it doesn't like the light." The final legible page was nearly blank, save for a single sentence at the bottom, written in tiny, almost childlike handwriting: "If you find this, don't follow me." There was no sign of blood on the journal. No tears, no dirt smudges that indicated it had been buried by force. Forensics concluded that it had been intentionally hidden, tucked neatly beneath the rock as if Emily had wanted someone to find it, but only much later. Perhaps when it was safe. Perhaps when it wasn't. The placement, the timing, the fact that it survived the fire at all, none of it made logical sense. And yet, the journal was real. And so were the words. Word of the journal was never released to the public. Park authorities feared the renewed frenzy it would stir, especially given the unexplained nature of her final writings. But among rangers, the journal became legend. It was passed around quietly, read in whispers during night shifts, and always returned with solemn silence. The words haunted them, especially that last line. Some believed Emily had crossed into something ancient, something watching from the tree line, and once she saw it, there was no turning back. Others believed she was being hunted, not by an animal, but by the forest itself, and that maybe she had left behind the journal as a final warning, a desperate message for whoever came next. It's been over 2 decades since Emily Hart vanished, yet her presence still lingers in Yosemite's northern trails, not just in memory, but in something far stranger. Locals who live near the park speak in hushed tones about the ridge and warn newcomers never to wander too deep. Campfire stories, once dismissed as drunken tales, have become more detailed, more consistent. Hikers report hearing soft humming in the woods, Almost melodic, a tune no one can quite place but all remember. Some say it's a woman's voice. Others say it changes depending on the time of day. A few insist that if you hum it back, the forest hums with you. One retired ranger, who spoke under anonymity, shared that every July 17th, the anniversary of Emily's disappearance, a black horse is seen near the edge of the ravine. Always at dawn, always watching, never moving. Rangers who've tried to investigate find hoofprints that start but never end. They follow them until they vanish in the middle of the trail, as if the creature simply lifted into the air or was swallowed whole by the earth. Cameras fail to capture the horse. Batteries drain. Compass needles twitch. And yet, the stories persist. Not all who see it are believed, but those who do never forget the eyes. Black, glassy, unblinking, almost human. There are even stranger accounts from hikers who've strayed too far, people who speak of encountering a woman in a ranger's uniform, standing at the tree line with a distant, glassy stare. She never speaks, never moves. She simply watches. Those who approach her say she turns and walks slowly into the forest. If followed, she disappears after the third bend, every single time. Some hikers who've tried to follow her deeper have later emerged, confused, disoriented. One young man was found crying near a stream, clutching a ranger badge with no memory of where he got it. His backpack was missing. His boots were on the wrong feet. He never hiked again. Park staff won't talk openly about the legend, but many now refuse to patrol alone in that area, especially after sunset. Radios often pick up stray frequencies, low whispers that don't match any known channel. Some claim they've heard a voice whisper, "Turn back." In 2014, a group of thrill-seeking YouTubers attempted to film an overnight challenge in the Northern Ridge Zone. Their footage was never uploaded. Their abandoned campsite was found 2 days later, gear scattered, cameras smashed, and a single notebook left behind. Inside, written in a handwriting that didn't match any of the group, "She's still here, and she's not alone." To this day, Silent Pass remains a no-go zone for many rangers and hikers alike. There are no formal barriers, no warning signs, just the weight of story, reputation, and the cold silence of the trees. Locals say if you stand still long enough, you might hear 2 sets of footsteps behind you, one light, one heavy, one human, one hoofed, but when you turn around, there's nothing there. Just wind through the pine needles. Just fog drifting across the trail. Just that feeling that you're not walking alone anymore. So what really happened to Ranger Emily Hart that foggy morning in 2003? Was she the victim of nature, a hidden predator, or something far older? Something that watches from the shadows and waits for the lost? We may never know. All that remains are whispers, footprints that vanish mid-trail, and a journal soaked in fear. But one thing is certain: the forest remembers. And if you ever find yourself hiking near Silent Pass, and the trees fall too quiet, if your compass spins, if you hear hooves in the distance, or a woman's voice humming from the mist, don't follow it. Don't answer. Just turn around. And leave, before she finds you first.
If you liked this video, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Most importantly, subscribe and hit the bell icon so the next secret finds you first.